All right, let's dive into some AI research that's making waves. Imagine AI that's not just smart, but really hard to trick. That's what we're looking at today.
Yeah, it's all about this idea of inference time compute in those large language models, giving AI more time to think before giving an answer.
Okay, so instead of making AI models bigger, we should focus on giving them more processing power when they're making a decision.
Exactly. This research paper, we're looking at challenges that bigger is always better idea. They say it's about how well it uses resources when facing a challenge, especially a tricky one.
So making AI more robust, more resistant to those adversarial attacks, we hear about how big of a problem are these vulnerabilities? Are we talking sci-fi or a real danger?
Well, AI security is kind of like a digital arms race. As AI systems get better, so do the ways to find their weaknesses. One researcher, Nicholas Carlini, said after over 9,000 research papers in 10 years, we haven't gotten much better at securing AI.
9,000 papers and we're still behind. That's a little worrying. So what makes this inference time compute approach so different? Why could it be a game changer?
Traditional methods like adversarial training are like trying to guess every attack and train the model to defend against them. It's computationally expensive and it often doesn't work.
So like a fortress with walls to stop certain invaders, but a new enemy shows up with a different weapon.
Exactly. Scaling inference time compute is different. It's about giving the model resources to think critically and adapt. It's less about pre-programmed defenses and more about the AI figuring things out.
That's a big change in how we think. So how did they test this idea? What were their experiments like?
They took two AI models from OpenAI, O1 Preview and O1 Mini, and really put them to the test. They tested them on all sorts of tasks, from math problems to figuring out if content is harmful.
So they wanted to see how these models help up under pressure. What kinds of attacks did they use? I bet they had to get creative.
Oh, they did. They used everything from simple many-shot attacks, where you try to brainwash the model by showing it examples of attacks that worked,
That's sneaky.
to more complex techniques like soft token attacks, messing with the meaning of words within the model, like reaching into the AI's brain and changing how it understands language.
Okay, that's some serious hacking. Did they just use algorithms, or did real people try to trick these models?
They brought in the experts, human red teaming experts. These are the people who try to break into systems to find weaknesses. They also looked at prompt injection attacks, hiding bad instructions in website content, waiting for an AI to find them.
Wow, so they really tried to cover a lot of real-world situations. Okay, tell me, did this thinking time idea actually work?
Here's the interesting part. Increasing inference time compute made the models tougher across the board, like giving them a shield even against attacks they'd never seen.
That's a good sign, but you said generally, were there times it didn't work as well? There's always a catch, isn't there?
Well, they found that how well scaling compute works depends on the task. It works best when the task has clear criteria for success, like a math problem.
But what about tasks that need judgment, like deciding if something's harmful? Did more thinking time help there?
That's where it gets tricky. When the rules are unclear, giving the AI more time doesn't always help. It's like asking a judge to rule when the law is vague.
So even with more processing power, the AI can still struggle if the rules aren't clear. It's not just about making the AI smarter, it's about the framework it works in.
Exactly. And this shows a big challenge in AI safety defining rules, especially for things like harmful content, which is complex. It needs an understanding of not just AI, but social and ethical stuff too.
So this research isn't just about algorithms, it's about how we define and control how AI behaves. Like we need a new legal system for AI.
That's a really interesting point. As AI gets more integrated, we need new ways to make sure it acts according to our values. And this research says relying on things like scaling compute might not be enough.
So we need to think about the rules, not just how to play better, but you said the researchers made new attacks for this inference time compute. How is that possible? Shouldn't more thinking time make AI more secure?
Well, they came up with a think less attack.
Think less. How do you attack something by making it think less? That doesn't make sense.
It's like reverse psychology. They tricked the model into using less compute, making it rush and more likely to mess up.
Like giving a judge so much info they can't think it through properly, you're taking advantage of time pressure.
Exactly. And then there's nerd sniping.
Nerd sniping, what's that about? Sounds kind of fun.
It's not fun at all. This attack makes the model waste resources on useless stuff, like giving the AI a puzzle it gets lost in, forgetting about the actual task.
So it's not just thinking less, it's thinking about the wrong things. That's a clever way to use the AI's resources against it.
And it shows a weakness of this approach. Even with more compute power, if the AI is tricked, it becomes more vulnerable.
This is getting complicated. So what's the takeaway for someone who doesn't know much about AI? What should our listener be thinking about?
The key is that building robust AI isn't simple. It's not just technical. It's about the connection between what AI can do, what we ask it to do, and the rules that govern it.
Like training a powerful but unpredictable animal. We need to understand how to guide it in a way that's good for everyone.
A great analogy. Just like training an animal takes time and understanding, building trustworthy AI needs research, thinking about ethics, and adapting as we learn.
So while scaling inference time compute is promising, it's not a magic solution. We need to think about the whole system. But what should developers think about when designing AI, especially something that is people's lives?
That's a great question, and it brings us to a key point. This research shows we're moving past just making AI bigger and faster. Now we need to deal with questions of alignment and control.
Alignment and control, interesting words. You're not just talking about efficiency, but making sure it's doing the right things, things we see as good and safe.
Exactly. And even as we improve AI robustness, we need to focus on the ethics. It's not just stopping AI from doing bad, it's about making sure it's working towards good, even when things are unexpected or someone's trying to mess it up.
So moving past defense and thinking about how to guide AI to help humanity, I like that idea. But how do we actually do that? What should developers ask themselves?
Here are some crucial questions first. What could go wrong with this system? Not just technical problems, but unintended consequences or biases from its training data.
So thinking about potential harm, both intentional and not. What else?
Second, how can we make this system transparent and accountable? How can we understand its decisions so we can fix any problems?
Transparency and accountability are key for trust, especially in AI systems that are getting more complex and independent. Sounds like it's not just about AI's technical skills, it's about the social and ethical rules around it.
Exactly. And last, maybe most important, what are the values we want this system to have? How can we make sure it acts in a way that makes society better?
So it's not just safe AI, it's AI that makes the world better. That's powerful.
Yeah, it's a powerful idea. It means we need to move past just seeing AI as a tool and start thinking of it as a partner in shaping the future. A partner with a ton of potential, but one that needs guidance.
AI as a partner. That raises some interesting, maybe even a little scary questions. If we give AI more freedom, more thinking time, how do we make sure it makes decisions we agree with? It's like giving it a longer leash and hoping it doesn't run off.
That's the tough part. We need to find ways to teach AI values, to shape how it makes decisions based on our ethics. AI ethics and value alignment are super important here.
So like teaching AI right from wrong, but much more complicated than that. It's not just about rules, it's about understanding why those rules exist.
Exactly. It needs a deep understanding of how people think, social norms, and all those unspoken things behind our morals. It's a lot to ask, but we can't ignore it.
This research on inference time compute is just the beginning. It brings up all these questions about what intelligence is, what computers can do, and what it means to be human as machines get smarter.
That's a really deep point. We often get caught up in the technical stuff, but this research shows us that the hardest parts might be philosophical and ethical. What is intelligence? How do we measure consciousness? How do we make sure what we create still agrees with our values as it changes and gets more independent?
Those are some big questions, and we don't have all the answers, but we need to be asking them and trying to figure them out as we move into this new world of AI.
Absolutely. And I think everyone listening should join these conversations, read the research, and think critically about what AI can do, both good and bad. We're all in this together. And the more we know and participate, the better we'll be able to deal with what's coming.
Well said. Now, I always like to give our listeners something to think about, something to spark more exploration or debate. So, to build on what we talked about, what's one question you would ask our listeners?
Here's one that gets to the core of this inference time compute idea. Imagine you're making an AI system for something really important, something that could affect a lot of people. How would you balance the need for speed, using low inference time compute so it can react quickly, with the need to protect it from those increasingly sophisticated attacks we've been talking about?
That's a great question. It's the classic efficiency versus security problem. We want AI to be fast, but not so vulnerable that it can be easily tricked or cause unintended problems. It's a tough balance, and we need to carefully consider each situation and the possible risks.
Exactly, and it shows why we need more research and open discussion as AI safety and ethics continue to change. There are no easy answers, but by asking the right questions and talking about it, we can work towards a future where AI is a force for good.
Well said. This deep
Oh, wait, someone wants to join. Hey, go for it.
A. Which method is more useful or more powerful to do the attack?
That's a really interesting question. When you say wage method, are you referring to something specific like a soft token attack where the attacker controls the embedding vectors?
Okay, let's unpack this. From what we've discussed, the research did highlight soft token attacks, which involve manipulating how the AI understands language, and they also discussed the think less and nerd sniping attacks.
Exactly. The soft token attacks are very powerful because they directly manipulate the AI's understanding of words, but they're also very unrealistic because they require access to internal parts of the model.
Whereas the think less attack, as we discussed, tries to make the AI rush and use less of its processing power, making it more prone to errors.
And the nerd sniping attack is kind of a clever distraction, making the AI waste its resources on unproductive reasoning. So each one exploits different vulnerabilities.
Okay, so the wage method, if we're talking about soft tokens, is definitely powerful, but not very practical for most attackers, given it requires direct access.
That's right. Whereas the think less and nerd sniping attacks are more about exploiting how the AI uses its compute, making them perhaps more accessible to an attacker.
So it's not necessarily about one being more powerful, but more about the different ways they take advantage of the AI's inner workings. It really depends on the situation, doesn't it?
Precisely. Now, to pick up on our earlier discussion, we were talking about how this research is leading to a shift in how we approach AI safety.
Yeah, so moving past defense and thinking about how to guide AI to help humanity. That's where we were headed, and I really do think that's the key takeaway.
Absolutely. It's not just stopping AI from doing bad, but making sure it works towards good, even when things are unexpected or someone's trying to mess it up.
Okay, so to recap a bit of what we've covered, we've talked about how inference time compute can make AI more robust, and we've also gone over some of the sneaky attacks they tried.
And we also touched on how more thinking time doesn't always solve the problem when the rules are unclear. It's like asking a judge to rule when the law is vague.
Right, and we asked a crucial question: how can we balance the need for speed with the need to protect against attacks? That is, I think, what it comes down to.
Exactly. So even as we think about how to make AI more robust, we have to consider alignment and control. It's not just about efficiency, but also about making sure that it's doing what's good and safe.
So like we said, it's not enough to just make AI smarter. We also have to make sure it's aligned with our values. It's a massive task.
Absolutely. It means we need to move past just seeing AI as a tool and start thinking of it as a partner that needs guidance. Oh, go for it.
Okay, that's a really interesting idea, like a built-in safety mechanism.
Yeah, it's like you're suggesting we build a system with layers of checks to catch things as they happen.
So maybe something like having AI be able to retrace its reasoning steps.
Or perhaps having different parts of an AI that can monitor each other for errors or attacks.
It's kind of like the idea of having a red team always checking, but built right into the AI itself.
Exactly. A self-monitoring system could be a great way to increase its robustness, and that definitely fits into what we were saying about alignment and control.
So instead of just focusing on more power, we're thinking about building safety into the system itself, a safer checker, as you said.
And that relates to what we were about to talk about, which is how do we balance research into different methods, not just compute, for robustness?
Right, like maybe we need to focus on creating AI that can understand and apply our values more effectively, like our safer checker idea.
And that also brings up an important point about how we should be looking at AI as it develops.
It's a very exciting yet also very complicated situation that we have found ourselves in.
There are a lot of important questions, and we all need to be participating in the conversation.
And now, to really build on what we talked about, here's another question for you to consider.
Okay, so given that scaling compute helps for some attacks, but not all, how do we prioritize research into other methods that don't solely rely on compute to improve robustness?
That's a great question. It pushes us to think beyond just more power and into what else we might need to make sure AI is safe and helpful.
Precisely. It's all about balance, not just blindly scaling compute, but also trying to understand how to align AI with our values.
Well said. This has been a very deep conversation, and hopefully it's given you, our listener, a lot to think about.
Absolutely. We encourage you to explore this topic more and contribute to these important conversations.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into AI security and ethics. It was great having you here, as always.
Yes, thanks for joining. And remember, the future of AI is in our hands, so let's make it a good one.